We're over here at the valve grinder. Our valve grinder has the valve mechanism that's going to hold the valve in a set of blocks here, and it's got a set of wheels. These wheels are going to drive the valve, and it's going to rotate. And the valve face is in alignment with the side of this grinding wheel. So while I'm oscillating this back and forth, I will be slowly retracting the valve back into this with a hand wheel off to the left. So, but before we go to grind this, what I would like to do is actually do a comparison of, or just show you why valve lapping is not the best deal. And if you remember, valve lapping is the process that uses an abrasive paste in between the valve face and the valve seat. And that abrasive paste is put between the two so that you can then cycle the valve back and forth, and the idea is that you're going to grind the face and seat to a perfect contact. Now, the issue I have with that is all this, the surface area on this valve face, that's all pitting. I mean, you can see the shadows being cast across the top of it, but there's a pit mark there, there's a pit mark there, and lapping compound isn't going to take all that surface away unless you did it for a long period of time. But then the problem with that is that you don't have a flat face anymore, you now have a convex face on one side and concave on the other. One side would be convex, maybe the valve face, and the valve seat might be concave or convex, vice versa. So we have, the issue is that when you put lapping compound on a used valve, that lapping compound is a very fine abrasive paste, and it's going to get stuck in those little valleys. There's a valley there, and there's another valley there, and it's going to embed in those surfaces. And using brake clean and brushes is going to get most of it off, but not all of it. So when that engine starts to run, it will, it's just going to start to abrade the new surface that you've created as the engine's running, and it's going to be helped by the combustion pressure and compression pressure, the engine heat, and it's going to cause accelerated wear on the valve face and valve seat. And I understand a lot of people do valve lapping, and that's perfectly fine, but what we want to do is do a long-term repair that we can guarantee the most. All right, so another feature of this valve face is that we see that there's a rim. Let's see if I can get a better pointer here. There is a rim of like a gray-blue area. Now, this rim right there is simply the part of the exhaust valve that did not touch the valve seat. So it's an unworn section. And it has that matte finish to it because that's how I clean the valves. I use a media blaster to blast the valves. I blast the fillet side of the valve here. I blast the valve face. I blast the margin out here. But that's why that surface is nice and flat. And when valve grinding, we're actually going to take this whole surface down and we're going to machine it to a 45 degrees relative to the valve stem. So let's go over to the valve grinder. Back of the valve grinder, we're going to turn it on. And when I put this valve in here, make sure it's good and dry, I'm going to clamp it, and you see it spinning. And you see it spinning right there. So as it's spinning, I'm going to bring the grinding wheel up next to it, and I'm going to oscillate that grinding wheel back and forth. I don't want the valve to come off the face of the wheel. I just want to go from one end of the wheel, or one edge of the wheel to the other. And I'm slowly turning and advancing that valve back into the valve chuck. And you'll get to hear it engage. So to clean up this valve, I had to take off about 2/1000ths of an inch. So that means the pitting that was in there was about 2/1000ths of an inch deep. So let's go back over to the microscope and take a look at a round valve face. Back over at the microscope, we have the valve face has been machined now, and it's got some, grinding marks in there, and that's perfectly normal. This surface will get burnished down as the engine runs for the first few minutes, and the valve face and valve seat will be broken in or bedded into each other. But this is what it really should look like. Even a brand new valve will have a surface similar to this. And it'll provide a much better sealing surface and more life compared to simply just lapping the valve in. So, grinding the valve face. Okay, you can see the valve rotating. Adjust the angles here. There we go. Cool. All right, so we can see the valve here in the chuck, and I'm going to turn on the clamp it in there. And we see it rotating. Now I'm going to bring the grinding wheel up next to the valve. And I'm slowly going to advance that wheel towards the grinding, or the valve towards the grinding wheel. And you see how that surface got nice and shiny? All right, we'll unchuck it, pull it out, and take a look at it. There you go. Nice and clean, a well-ground valve. All right, let's do another one. Uncheck it and take a look at that surface. Looks pretty good. There's our valve. have to focus there. Oh, another shot. There we go. And there's the valve face. And that's machining a valve face. Now the intake valves are going to be exactly the same process. So it's, it's just again with that lather, rinse, repeat thing. So when we come back, we'll be set up to tip the valves, and I'm just doing this just as a demonstration. This would actually be done primarily through during assembly of the cylinder head. So let me get set up for that. Here we are set up to tip the valve. So on the ends of the valves from a used engine, the tip of the valve might actually be concave from the rocker running against it. And we need to just reestablish a nice flat surface. So this is on the other end of the valve grinder, where I have a V-block where I slide this into this micrometer. I have the micrometer set. So when I push the valve up against the micrometer and clamp it down, oops, I should clamp it down. Oh, had this set up for a lot smaller diameter. When I push it in against the micrometer and I clamp the valve down, this valve tip is now 2/1000ths of an inch in towards this grinding wheel that's in the background here. So I'll go ahead and turn it on, and you'll hear it grind the valve tip. See all the sparks there. And then you get to see what the surface finish now looks like. See, it's kind of got a linear pattern on it. There he goes, a pretty good shot. And we're just making the tip of the valve square. Now it's best to actually have a chamfer on the outside of that valve tip. So the other part of our valve grinder has a V-block that then goes in at an angle into the grinding wheel. So we'll just go ahead and demonstrate this. A little dark back there. All right, now you see that the valve tip has got that chamfer around the outside edge of it, and that helps just to make the valve tip a little bit stronger. So, and that's machining a valve. When we come back, we'll be working on the valve seats on the cylinder head to get them all set up and machined, to be followed by assembly.